My husband brought home a little female cat and dotes on her like the apple of his eye. He even specifically told me not to get her spayed. One day I came home from work early and caught a stray male cat sneaking in through the window to mate with her. I was just about to take out my phone to record it for my husband when suddenly a barrage of comments exploded before my eyes. LMAO. The side character is still filming this. Little does she know that Tomcat is actually her husband in disguise. Right, the female lead is way too clever. She makes the system turn her into a cat, so she can shamelessly move into the male lead's house and stick to him like glue. The male lead is so doting too, he even gets the system to transform him, right in front of the other woman. He gets intimate with the female lead, so thrilling. I stared at those two cats entwined in passion and slowly put down my phone. So these two beasts are actually my husband and his mistress. I turned around, picked up the pet carrier, and stuffed both of them inside. Hello, is this the pet hospital? I have two cats that need to be spayed. Yes, I'll bring them right now. My husband's name is Zhou Jinyan. The name sounds elegant, and he does have a face that lives up to it. Standing at 185 meters, he has deep-set features, a straight nose bridge, and a jawline sharp enough to cut a steak. He works as a product manager at an internet company, earning over $400,000 a year, which makes him a top-tier catch in our circles. We've been married for 3 years. How should I put it? Life is neither good nor bad, like a glass of plain water left out too long, not too hot to drink, but not much taste to it either. My first meeting with Zhou Jinyan was very cliché. Introduced by friends, we went for meals and movies, found each other's circumstances suitable and personalities compatible, so we got the marriage certificate. There was no grand, passionate process, nor any unforgettable vows. We were like two roommates living together, with clearly divided duties. He covers the bulk of the mortgage, while I take care of daily expenses and household chores. Our strict split of costs leaves no room for ambiguity. I've always felt he's like a methodical machine, with little that seems to stir any emotional fluctuation in him. The only time I felt he still had a touch of humanity was about a month and a half ago. That night, he came home after working late. Something bulged inside his suit jacket, as if he had hidden an object in there. I was curled up on the sofa watching a variety show when I caught a glimpse of him sneaking into the bedroom out of the corner of my eye. He came out a while later, his jacket already deflated. What are you hiding? I asked. He paused for a moment, looking a bit uneasy. Nothing. I didn't press further. Zhou Jinyan had always had a strong sense of boundaries. He never let me touch his phone, nor did he ever voluntarily report his whereabouts. I was used to it. That was just how we got along. You don't cross me, I don't cross you. But the next day, I heard a cat meowing, a very soft, delicate sound, coming from the corner of the bedroom. I followed the sound and found a cat in a cardboard box at the bottom of the wardrobe. It was very small, probably only 2 or 3 months old, pure white all over except for a tuft of light gray fur on its head, as if it had accidentally dipped itself in ink. It was curled up in an old towel, its eyes round and large, of a very pale amber color. When it looked at you, they resembled 2 glass beads soaked in honey. Cute, isn't it? Zhou Jinyan's voice came from behind me, carrying a softness I had never heard before. I turned my head to look at him. He was leaning against the doorframe, a smile playing on his lips, his eyes completely fixed on the cat, so tender they seemed almost to melt. You picked it up? Yeah, downstairs at the office. It was crouched by the flower bed on a rainy day, completely soaked. He walked over and gently scooped up the cat. The cat, well behaved, nuzzled its head into his palm and let out a contented purr. I looked at it for a long time, but I just couldn't bear it. I was a bit surprised. Zhou Jinyan, how should I put it? He's a refined egoist, the kind of person who would walk around an elderly beggar on the street rather than pass by directly, and yet he actually felt compassion for a stray cat. Then you keep it. But let's get one thing straight, you're on your own for cleaning the litter box and feeding it. I'm not getting involved. Fine, he agreed readily, his eyes never leaving the cat. The next day, he went to the pet store and came back with a pile of stuff: imported cat food, goat milk formula, nutritional paste, a cat bed, a cat tree, a teaser wand, and all kinds of cat supplies I couldn't even recognize. He pulled them out of the shopping bags one by one and laid them out on the living room floor, like he was setting up a nursery. Is it really necessary? I sat on the sofa, watching him assemble the cat tree, sweat beading on his forehead. Why wouldn't it be? He said without looking up. It's so small, we need to take good care of it. I clicked my tongue and said nothing more that evening. He gave the cat a bath, dried it carefully with a hairdryer, then held it in his arms and gave it a name. Her name is Nian, he said, gently scratching the cat's chin, as in Nian Buwang, never forgetting, Nian. I rolled the 2 syllables around in my mouth, feeling something odd but unable to put my finger on it. In the days that followed, Zhou Jinyan's doting on the cat spiraled out of control at a visibly alarming pace. He gets up at 6 every morning to prepare Nian's breakfast. He minces the chicken breast, mixes it with egg yolk, steams it, lets it cool to body temperature, and then serves it to Nian on a small plate. He doesn't even have time for his own breakfast, quickly downing a cup of black coffee before rushing out. He has bought over a dozen tiny outfits for Nian, including a princess dress, a little woolen sweater, a denim vest, and even a hair clip that mimics a luxury brand's design. Nian hates wearing clothes. Every time she gets dressed, she rolls all over the floor, so he patiently tries on one piece after another until he finds the one she's willing to accept. He installed a pet camera in the living room and checks it every 10 minutes while at work. If Nian is sleeping, he speaks softly into the microphone. Good girl, Nian, Dad will be home after work. If Nian is playing, he grins goofily, so tender and doting. Once I got up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom and realized the bedroom was empty. I walked out and saw Zhou Jinyan lying on the living room sofa, with Nian curled up on his chest, both human and cat fast asleep. Moonlight streamed in through the window, falling over them, and the scene was as quiet as some sacred religious painting. I stood in the hallway watching for a while, unsure what I was feeling. Not jealousy. I'm not about to compete with a cat for affection. It's just that I feel a bit dazed, as if my husband has given all his tenderness to that cat, while all I get from him is a polite and distant form of courtesy. But life, after all, must go on. Until that day, when Zhou Jinyan said something to me. It was a Saturday, and I rarely didn't have to work overtime, so I curled up on the sofa to read. Nian lay sprawled atop the highest level of the cat tree, basking in the sun with half-closed eyes, her tail swishing lazily back and forth. Zhou Jinyan came out of the kitchen, coffee in hand, and sat down across from me. Biluo, he called my name. Nian, don't take her to get spayed. I looked up at him, somewhat surprised. Getting a cat spayed or neutered is common sense. Even though I don't own a cat myself, I know how serious the problem of stray cat overpopulation can be. Besides, Nian is a female. If she isn't spayed, her heat cycles will keep the whole building restless with her yowling. Why? He was silent for a moment, then said, I think it's too cruel. It's a complete life. Why should we take away its right to reproduce? Are you serious? Serious? His tone was calm but resolute. I've already made up my mind. When Nian is a bit older, if it wants a mate, I'll find one for it. I don't want it to have surgery. It's too painful. I stared at him for a full 10 seconds, making sure he wasn't joking. Fine, your cat. Your call. I lowered my head and went back to flipping through my book, but that faint, strange feeling in my heart was like a drop of ink falling into clear water, slowly spreading out. When did he become so empathetic? When Nian was 5 months old. She went into heat for the first time that day. I came home from work and as soon as I opened the door, I heard a heartbreaking cry. And Nian was rolling on the floor, arching her body, lifting her hindquarters high, and kicking her back legs incessantly. When she saw me, she rushed over to rub against my ankles, then rolled back onto the floor after a couple of rubs, her cries growing even more pitiful. Zhou Jinyan hasn't returned yet. I'm left alone with this cat in heat, completely at a loss. I crouch down and try to stroke its back. Its body is alarmingly hot, its spine trembling violently under my palm. It rolls over and pushes its head insistently against my hand, its eyes glistening as if filled with tears. All right, I mutter. Stop meowing at me. It's not like I can help you. I pulled out my phone and texted Zhou Jinyan. Your daughter is in heat. Get back here now. He replied instantly. On my way. 10 minutes later, he showed up at the door out of breath, holding a bag of catnip he had just bought. When he saw Nian in that state, his expression changed immediately. He walked over quickly, picked up the cat, and said in a voice full of concern and urgency, Be good, Nian, Daddy's here. It's okay now. Nian wriggled in his arms, her cries softening slightly, but she still kept rubbing her head against his chin. I looked it up. Zhou Jinyan said to me while soothing Nian, the heat cycle usually lasts 3 to 7 days. During this time, we need to spend more time with her, keep her from going outside, and make sure she doesn't come into contact with any male cats outdoors. If you don't spay her, she'll go into heat every 2 or 3 weeks, I said. He paused for a moment. I know, I've already made up my mind. Once this heat cycle is over, I'm going to find her a mate. Looking for a mate, yeah. I contacted a cattery. There's a male ragdoll with excellent features. When Nien Nien is ready, I'll let them mate once. I opened my mouth to say something, but in the end, I said nothing. His called, but Nien Nien didn't seem to need that plush tomcat. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. I had left work early that day, feeling pretty good, thinking I'd go home, take a shower, order some takeout, and just laze around for the whole evening. The moment I opened the door, I saw a cat lying on the windowsill, a grayish-black tomcat, very large, clearly a stray from outside, and Nien Nien, the one cat Zhou Jinyan cherished so much he was afraid he'd drop her if he held her in his hands, and afraid she'd melt if he kept her in his mouth. That very Nien Nien was being pinned down by that stray tomcat. The two cats were tangled together, their position completely unguarded. The stray tomcat bit the back of Nien Nien's neck, his body thrusting violently. Nien Nien lay on the ground, her tail tilted to one side, letting out a cry I had never heard from her before, not one of pain, but of submission. I stood there frozen. My first reaction was neither anger nor disgust, but a kind of absurd, almost darkly comical bewilderment. Zhou Jinyan had taken every precaution, keeping Nien Nien indoors, keeping other tomcats away, only for some stray cat that crawled out of who knows which crack in the wall to swagger right through the window and have his way with his little girl. What expression would he have if he found out? The thought struck me as slightly amusing for a moment. I even thought about capturing this scene on camera to show Zhou Jinyan when he came back, so he could see what it meant to say, "Man proposes, God disposes." I pulled out my phone, opened the camera, and aimed it at the two cats entangled in their tender moment. In the viewfinder, Nien Nien turned her head and licked the corner of the stray tomcat's mouth. That gesture was incredibly intimate, nothing like the manner of forced mating, more like mutual affection. The stray male cat responded to it, rubbing its head against Nien Nien's face with a gentleness that seemed unlike that of a stray. Just as I was about to press the shutter, the view in front of me suddenly exploded with a dense barrage of comments. LMAO, LMAO. The side chick is still here snapping photos. Little does she know that male cat is actually her husband transformed, right? Our lovely female lead is so smart, having the system turn her into a cat so she can openly move into the male lead's house and be all lovey-dovey. I'm shipping them so hard. The male lead is so doting too. He even had the system transform on purpose and made love to the female lead right in front of the supporting actress. So thrilling. Woo-woo. Nien Nien baby is such a tease, deliberately going into heat in front of the other woman and forcing the male lead to turn into a cat to get it on with her. What kind of enchanting little fairy is this? Hey, upstairs, no spoilers. Wouldn't it be more fun to let the supporting actress find out slowly? Ha ha ha. Speaking of which, this supporting actress is pretty dense. Her husband keeps calling out Nien Nien while looking at the cat every day, and she hasn't gotten suspicious at all. After all, she's just a cannon fodder side character with an IQ set this low, so cut her some slack, feeling bad for the side character for 3 seconds. Then back to shipping my cat CP. I stared at the two cats tangled in each other and slowly put down my phone. My brain, as if frozen, kept loading like crazy. It turned out that the male cat was actually my husband transformed. Nien Nien is the mistress he brought home. System, transformation, transmigration, side character. These words pierced through my cognitive defenses like bullets. I took 3 deep breaths, forcing myself to calm down. First, I needed to confirm whether the barrage comments were actually true. I looked back at the two cats. Of course I recognized Nien Nien, white fur, gray-tipped ears, amber eyes. It was unmistakably the one. When I first saw that feral tomcat, I thought it was just an ordinary stray, grayish-black and somewhat large in size, but now, as I look more closely, I suddenly noticed something I hadn't seen before. The tomcat's eyes, they are not ordinary cat eyes, not the usual murky yellow of strays, but a clear, almost amber gold, like honey pierced by sunlight. Like Zhou Jinyan's eyes. Zhou Jinyan's eyes were exactly that color. Back when I was set up on that blind date, my friend told me, "This guy has really beautiful eyes." I scoffed at the time, thinking, how beautiful could eyes possibly be? But the moment we met, those eyes caught me off guard, amber, deep, like 2 pools of unmelted honey. At that moment, The tomcat turned his head and looked at me with those amber eyes. That look was not the way a cat looks at a person. How does a cat look at a person? Warily, distantly, or lazily, with indifference, but in this tomcat's gaze toward me, there was something profoundly human. Scrutiny. It knows who I am, it's watching to see if I've noticed anything. My heart sank. Then I noticed a second detail. On the inside of the tomcat's front leg, there was a small bald patch of skin, revealing a scar the size of a fingernail. On the inside of Zhou Jinyan's left wrist, there is also a scar. It was from the first year of our marriage, when he was cooking and got splashed by hot oil. I remember it very clearly, because that day was my birthday. He said he wanted to cook me a big meal, but ended up making a mess of the kitchen. In the end, we still ordered takeout. The shape of that scar is very unique, like a crooked little leaf, and the bald patch on this cat's front leg was exactly the same shape. My blood ran cold in that instant. I stood in the middle of the living room, less than 3 meters away from the two cats mating. Sunlight streamed in through the window, falling on them, on Nyan-Nyan's snow-white fur, and on the tomcat's gray-black back. The barrage comments are still scrolling. The supporting female character seems to have noticed. Her expression looks terrible, no way, no way. Are they really going to reveal it this soon? I wanted to watch a few more episodes of the cat play, honestly, I think the supporting female character is pretty pitiful too. Her husband turned into a cat and is fooling around with the other woman, right in front of her, upstairs. Stop being so sanctimonious. This is a transmigration novel. The female supporting character is just a tool. The love story of the male and female leads is the main plot. Exactly. Who said the male lead has to love the supporting female character? He and the female lead are the real perfect match. By the way, does the system mall have any invisibility talismans? I want to see the male and female leads turn back into human form and go at it right in front of the supporting female character. I closed my eyes, then opened them again. The two cats continued. Nyan-Nyan had already rolled over, rubbing her head against the tomcat's neck and letting out a contented purr. The tomcat lowered his head and licked Nyan-Nyan's ear, his movements as tender as if he were handling some rare treasure. I took a deep breath. Okay, very good. I turned and walked toward the entrance, picking up the pet carrier from beside the shoe cabinet. It was the one Zhou Jinyan had bought to take Nyan-Nyan for vaccinations, brand new, never used, its metal latch glinting coldly in the sunlight. I walked back to the living room. The two cats were still immersed in their own world, completely unaware of my approach. Or rather, they noticed but didn't care. After all, in their script, I was nothing more than a harmless supporting tool, a background prop who would fade away after discovering the truth. The barrage of comments started getting excited again. Why is the female supporting character carrying an aviation suitcase? No way, no way, she couldn't possibly be thinking of a holy crap, holy crap, holy crap. This supporting character is not following the script. I'm dying laughing. The supporting character is going to capture both the male and female leads. Exciting, exciting, exciting. I did not see this plot twist coming. I crouched down, opened the carrier, and placed it on the ground. Nyan-Nyan looked up at me, a flicker of caution in her amber eyes, but it was quickly overtaken by the restlessness of heat. She turned her head and went back to rubbing against the tomcat. The tomcat is more alert than I thought. He stares at me, a flicker of caution and warning in his amber eyes. I understand that look. It says, you'd better not make a move. I looked at it expressionlessly, then I moved quickly. My left hand grabbed Nyan-Nyan by the scruff of the neck, while my right hand lifted the tomcat by his. I stuffed Nyan-Nyan into the pet carrier first, followed by the tomcat. When I was stuffing the tomcat into the carrier, he turned his head and gave me a look. That look was far too human. Shock, anger, disbelief, and a hint of well-concealed panic. What was he thinking? That the sidekick wasn't following the script. With a click, I locked the crate door. The Donmu exploded. Holy crap, the supporting female character is badass, trapping them all in the flight case, physically sending off the male and female leads, oh no, oh no, oh no, the male lead is gonna die of rage inside the case. LOL, wait, she wouldn't be thinking of, no way, neutering, I'm dying of laughter. This female side character is a total joke. She's sending the male lead, who's turned into a cat, to get neutered, the male lead in a system novel getting sent for neutering by a female side character. What kind of hellish joke is this, no, don't hurt my precious Nyan-Nyan baby, upstairs, get a grip. That's the female Lead, not an actual cat, but her current body really is a cat. If she gets spayed, she really won't have any balls left, ha 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 ha, I'm dying. I did not see this plot twist coming. I ignored the barrage of comments on the screen, took out my phone, and scrolled to the pet hospital number in my contacts. Hello Vidar, Lynn, I have 2 cats that need to be spayed and neutered. Yes, I'll bring them in right now, 1 male and 1 female. Okay, I'll be there soon. I hung up and picked up the pet carrier. The carrier was very heavy. The 2 cats inside kept meowing, the male especially loud. His cries carrying an almost human-like anger. I looked down at it. Stop barking, I said. The pain will go away once we get to the hospital. The barrage comments were going crazy. I take back what I said about the female side character being a tool. She's way too ruthless, the male lead is probably dying to kill someone while trapped in the box. Oh no, make that kill a cat, where's the system? Male lead, where's your system? Change back now, system, detected host in a dangerous environment. However, reverting to human form may expose you to the female supporting character. Please decide for yourself, decide my ass. Which would you choose, being neutered or being discovered, ha 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 ha. I'm laughing so hard I could roll on the floor. I walked out of my apartment carrying the pet carrier and went downstairs. The carrier swayed in my hand as the 2 cats let out loud, piercing cries, drawing sideways glances from several middle-aged women passing by. Little girl, what's wrong with the cats? Why are they crying so pitifully? It's nothing, I smiled, taking him to get neutered. I looked down at the male cat in the carrier. He was scratching at the door with his paws. His amber eyes filled with an expression I had never seen on Zhou Jinyan's face. Fear, the fear of a male cat about to be neutered. Suddenly, I felt a little like laughing. Zhou Jinyan, oh Zhou Jinyan, don't you think neutering is cruel? Don't you keep saying you want to respect Nyanyan's right to reproduce? Don't you say you don't want it to feel pain? What about you? Then, do you feel any pain? It takes about 10 minutes to walk from my home to the veterinary clinic. During those 10 minutes, my brain worked like a high-speed machine, breaking down, reassembling, and analyzing every detail of the past month and a half. Nyan. The first time I heard this name, I found it very strange. Nyan, lingering on without forgetfulness. Who is it that you can't forget? What is it that you keep thinking about? And now I understand. Zhou Jinyan wasn't naming a cat, he was calling out to his lover, Nyanyan. Nyanyan. I remember one time, Zhou Jinyan was holding Nyanyan on the couch watching TV. As I walked by, I glanced at his phone screen. At the top of his WeChat chats was a pinned conversation, under the name Nyanyan. I didn't think much of it at the time. Nyanyan sounds like someone's online nickname. Perhaps a colleague of his, perhaps a friend. I never asked, and he never mentioned it. Looking back now, that Nyanyan is this cat, or rather, it's the person behind this cat, the so-called system owner, that baby girl protagonist. I continued walking, and continued thinking. The timing of Nyanyan's arrival at my house was also quite interesting. A month and a half ago. What happened a month and a half ago? I searched my memory and found a detail I had overlooked. A month and a half ago, Zhou Jinyan went on a week-long business trip. He told me he was going to Beijing for a meeting, and every day he sent me the hotel's location and photos of the conference room. Everything seemed perfectly normal, but on the night he returned, there was an extra item in his suitcase, a women's sweater. He said he brought it for a female colleague, forgot to give it to her, and casually stuffed it deep into the closet. I believed that explanation back then, but now, I suddenly remember what that sweater looked like. Cream-colored, soft, with a cashmere-like feel, and a small ring of lace trim around the neckline. That sweater is exactly the same color as Nyanyan's fur. By the time I reached the entrance of the pet hospital, the Danmaku was still scrolling, but the content had already changed. So the female lead is really going to have the male lead neutered. I'm starting to feel a little sorry for him, sorry my ass, he totally deserves it, okay, cheating and doing it right in front of his wife, but he was forced by the system, right? He and the female lead are the real true loves, so true love justifies cheating, true love justifies lying to his wife. What kind of values are these, isn't that how all transmigrated into a book stories go? The original female lead is just a tool. The romance between the hero and heroine is the main plot, even so, you can't treat the original female lead like a fool and mess around right in front of her. That's just disgusting, this is the price of cheating. JPG. I pushed open the door of the pet hospital, and a wave of scent mixed with disinfectant and pet shampoo hit me. The receptionist knew me and greeted me with a smile. "Mrs. Joe, you're here to get Nyan Nyan spayed." Two of them. I placed the pet carrier on the counter. One male and one female, both getting fixed. The receptionist glanced down at the two cats in the airline crate and hesitated for a moment. "And this male cat is a stray. It climbed in through the window to mate with Nyan Nyan, and I caught it. Might as well neuter it too. Consider it a good deed." The receptionist smiled. "Mrs. Joe, you're so kind. All right, let me register it. What's the male cat's name?" I looked down at the male cat in the crate. Its paws were scratching at the crate door. Its amber eyes locked onto me, mouth open, sharp canine teeth bared. I twitched the corner of my mouth. "Let's call it Nyan Nyan, as in anniversary." Barrage comments. Nyan Nyan, Nyan Nyan, is the female supporting character hinting at something. She's reminding the male lead, "I know everything." Terrifying. This woman is way too terrifying. I suddenly feel like this female supporting character is the real badass. Say something. Male lead. "Oh right, you can't speak." System, help, system. Host's current state is, cat a voice function cannot be activated. Suggestion, use, telepathy, to communicate with the female supporting character, telepathy my ass. The female supporting character can't hear it, ha 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 ha, I'm dying. The receptionist entered the information into the computer, then made a phone call to summon Dr. Lin Dar. Lin was a young man in his early 30s, wearing glasses and a white lab coat, looking quite gentle and refined. He walked over, opened the pet carrier, and glanced inside. "This tomcat is quite large," he said, reaching out to stroke the cat's back. "His coat looks good too. He doesn't seem like a stray. Could he be someone's lost pet?" "No, it's just a stray cat. Look how dirty it is. Its fur is all matted." The tomcat let out an angry hiss and swiped its claw at Dr. Lin's hand. Dr. Lin pulled his hand back just in time and laughed. "Quite the temper. All right, let's do the pre-op exam first. If everything's fine, we can proceed today." "Good," I said. "After the surgery, keep both cats here for overnight observation. I'll pick them up tomorrow." I turned and walked out of the veterinary clinic. The sun fell on my face, warm and gentle. The next afternoon, I went back to the hospital to pick them up. When Dr. Lin handed me the pet carrier, his expression was somewhat subtle. There was a small complication with the male cat's surgery. He woke up from the anesthesia unusually fast and nearly broke free from his bandaging midway, so we had to increase the sedative dose. "The incision is a bit larger than usual. Keep an eye on him at home and don't let him lick it." I nodded, paid by card, and carried the carrier home. Two cats lay side by side in their pet carriers, motionless, wearing Elizabethan collars. Nyan Nyan huddled in the corner, eyes unfocused, occasionally letting out a faint whimper. Nyan Nyan lay on its back, hind legs twitching slightly, a small patch of pale pink seeping through the bandage. Once home, I placed them back in their cat bed. Nyan Nyan struggled to stand, staggered a couple of steps, and looked back at me. That look, if cats could kill, that would be it. I crouched down to meet its eyes. "Joe Jinyan," I whispered. "Does it hurt?" Its entire body went rigid. I smiled, stood up, turned around, and went back to the bedroom. That night, I slept very soundly. It must have been a little past 2 in the morning when I was woken up by a noise. The sound came from the living room, like something had been knocked over, mixed with low, muffled groans. I put on my pajamas and walked out. The living room lights were off. Moonlight streamed in through the window, falling on the floor next to the sofa. Two people were curled up there, a man and a woman, naked, with tattered cat hair still clinging to their bodies. The man was Joe Jinyan. He was clutching his crotch with both hands, dark red blood seeping through his fingers. His face was as pale as paper, his forehead covered in cold sweat. On his inner thighs and lower abdomen, patches of stubble remained from surgical shaving. Like a plucked chicken, the woman, whom I didn't recognize, was curled up at the foot of the sofa, also clutching her crotch, her face pale, lips purple, and tears streaking black mascara down her cheeks. She still had the Elizabethan collar around her neck, a plastic, trumpet-shaped ring stuck in place and impossible to remove. Like an absurd flower, both of them had their mouths open, but no real sound came out, only hoarse, breathy noises, like ducks with their throats stepped on. The living room floor was a mess. The cat tree had toppled over, the litter box was overturned, the carrier sat askew in the corner with its door wide open. I stood at the hallway entrance, watching the scene. The moonlight shone on them. Deathly pale, Zhou Jinyan saw me first, in the moonlight. His eyes were still that amber color, but now they were bloodshot, and his pupils were contracting violently from the pain. He opened his mouth, and a broken syllable rolled from his throat. Bye. I didn't say anything. The woman saw me too. She instinctively tried to shrink back, but her back hit the leg of the sofa. She tumbled sideways onto the floor, and the Elizabethan collar struck the ground with a clicking sound. Her tears flowed even more fiercely, her lips trembling like a fish tossed onto the shore. I looked at her for 3 seconds, then I turned and walked to the landline, dialing 120. Hello, I need an ambulance at my place. 2 people, severe bleeding. The address is... After hanging up, I went back to the living room, picked up a blanket from the sofa, and threw it over the woman. She fumbled to wrap herself up, the Elizabethan collar getting stuck outside the blanket, like a snail trying to squeeze into its shell. Zhou Jinyan tried to stand, but barely propped himself up before collapsing back down, the back of his head hitting the floor with a dull thud. He lay on the ground, chest heaving violently, hands still clutching his groin as blood seeped through his fingers and pooled on the floor, glinting black in the moonlight. I stood beside him, looking down. The ambulance is coming soon, just hold on a little longer. He closed his eyes, his Adam's apple bobbing as if he were swallowing something. The ambulance arrived quickly. When hurried footsteps echoed in the hallway, I walked to the entrance and opened the door. 2 paramedics came up carrying a stretcher. The one in the lead was a middle-aged man surnamed Feng, whom I had seen a few times around the neighborhood before. Where's the patient? He asked. In the living room. He walked inside, sweeping the beam of his flashlight across the floor, over the fallen cat tree, over the pool of blood, until it finally landed on Zhou Jinyan and the woman. His flashlight froze. 2 seconds of silence. What's going on? My husband and I paused, and his friend, they got hurt in a fall. Dr. Feng didn't ask further. He crouched down with his partner to examine the injury. The beam of the flashlight fell on Zhou Jinyan's groin, which he was clutching, and Feng's expression shifted slightly. This injury, he glanced at me, needs immediate attention. He and his partner lifted the 2 onto stretchers. Zhou Jinyan kept his eyes shut the whole time, his jaw clenched tight, veins bulging on his forehead. The woman curled up on the stretcher, her Elizabethan collar askew, and she had covered her face with a blanket. As we went downstairs, we ran into a neighbor. Aunt Wang from apartment 302 was just coming back from her walk. When she saw the 2 people wrapped in nothing but blankets on the stretcher, her eyes widened like saucers. Oh my, what's wrong with Xiao Zhou? I fell and got hurt. I said. Fell where? Why is there so much blood? My lower body. Aunt Wang's mouth formed an O shape, and she couldn't close it for a long time. The elevator reached the 1st floor, and the stretcher was wheeled out. As it passed through the garden of the residential complex, a few young people out for a night run stopped to watch. Someone recognized Zhou Jinyan. Isn't that Brother Joe from the 11th floor? What happened? Not sure. Looks like there's blood underneath. Holy crap. You don't think his balls got crushed, do you? Keep your voice down. His wife is right there, face expressionless. I followed behind the stretcher and got into the ambulance. The next morning, I went to a law firm. The lawyer reviewed my documents and nodded. Nudity, being alone together in a room, and an injury to the genitals. These elements combined are enough to prove an improper relationship between the 2. Judges aren't fools. This kind of evidence is even more convincing than a typical hotel stay record. Can we make him walk away with nothing? Walking away with nothing isn't a standard legal concept, he said, pushing up his glasses. But if he doesn't want this evidence to appear in court, or to have these details recorded in the judgment, we can negotiate. He paused for a moment, looking at me. What does your husband do? Product manager at an internet company. What's his annual salary? Over 400,000. How big is the company? Mid-sized, about 200 or 300 people. Attorney Gu nodded. Then he probably doesn't want any of this getting out. He's a man, after all. He has his pride. He poured me a glass of water. My suggestion is to try negotiating first. If that doesn't work, then file a lawsuit. You have leverage, so there's no need to rush. I took a sip of water and nodded. Zhou Jinyan woke up on the 3rd day. I was at work when I got the call from the nurse, so I asked for leave and rushed over. When I arrived at the ward, he was awake, sitting up against the headboard. He still looked terrible. His lips were chapped, and his eyes were bloodshot. His body stiffened noticeably when he saw me come in. That woman was no longer in the next bed. The nurse said she had handled the transfer procedures after waking up yesterday afternoon and was picked up by a friend. I sat down on the chair by the bed. I was silent for a long time. He was the first to speak. You know everything. His voice was hoarse, not like his own. Yeah, after another moment of silence, that cat was me. I know. He closed his eyes, his Adam's apple bobbing slightly. When did you find out? While you were mating with that stray cat. He opened his eyes, looked at me, his lips moved, but no words came out. Zhou Jinyan. I called his name, my tone as calm as if I were reading a meeting minutes. Let's get a divorce. He didn't say a word. The house is mine, the car is mine, and we split the savings 50-50. You can keep your stocks and funds. I won't touch them. I paused for a moment. This is out of consideration for our 3 years of marriage. He still didn't say a word. If you don't agree, I'll take it to court. I have all the evidence, medical records, surveillance footage, neighbor testimonies. Then your company, your colleagues, everyone in your social circle will know how you, naked in the middle of the night, ended up with your lover on my living room floor getting your crotch scratched by a cat. His face turned even paler. I choose mediation, he said. All right. I stood up and placed a document on the nightstand. Here's the divorce agreement. Take a look. If there's no issue, sign it this week. I turned and walked out of the hospital room. Without looking back, the paperwork went through quickly. Zhou Jinyan was probably afraid that delays would cause more trouble, and also afraid I might change my mind, so he signed it on the 3rd day. The procedure for transferring the house title took a week. The car was faster. It was settled in just 2 days. When dividing the savings, we ran into a small issue. He had a financial investment of 200,000 in his name. He claimed it was his premarital property, but I argued it was joint income earned during the marriage. In the end, he gave in and gave me an extra 100,000. We sat in the Civil Affairs Bureau for 40 minutes on the day we signed the papers. The staff asked for the reason for the divorce. I said irreconcilable differences. Zhou Jinyan said nothing. Outside the bureau doors, he stood on the steps and looked at me. Biluo, I'm sorry. I looked at his face for about 5 seconds. Zhou Jinyan, I said, do you know how many times you've smiled at me in these 3 years? He didn't speak, not even once. He lowered his head. I turned and walked away. When I had taken about 10 steps, his voice came from behind, very soft, as if talking to himself. I didn't mean it. I didn't look back. It wasn't on purpose. That's a well-said sentence. Not intentionally cheating, not intentionally deceiving, not intentionally saying my lover's name so casually, not intentionally entwining with another woman right in front of me. He simply had no choice in front of the system, and lost control of himself in front of true love. It just so happened that he fell in love with a cat. And it just so happened that the cat was a person. All betrayals were unintentional, all hurts were coincidences. What a perfect excuse. I got in the car, tossed my bag onto the passenger seat, and started the engine. In the rearview mirror, Zhou Jinyan was still standing at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau, his figure growing smaller and smaller until it became a blurry, finally disappearing into the traffic. I looked away, shifted into gear, and pressed the gas. The cat tree was still at home, the cat bed too, along with all that imported cat food and goat milk powder. When I get back, I'm going to clear everything out, throw away what needs to be thrown away, and give away what needs to be given, then take a good shower, order some takeout, and get a solid night's sleep. Tomorrow the sun will rise as usual. Life goes on. It's just that I will finally belong completely to myself. What are your thoughts after hearing this story? Feel free to share them in the comments section. Next, let's begin a new story. Reborn. On the day I was diagnosed as pregnant, my husband Shin Si-hung had just woken up from an explosion, having lost part of his memory. His attending physician was his childhood sweetheart, Jiang Nua. Si-hung's brain is damaged, specifically in the area responsible for emotional recognition. Do you want him to remember that the child in your womb is his, or that I am the childhood sweetheart he once deeply loved? In the previous life, I chose to have him remember the child, but later, Shin Si-hung, despite acknowledging the child's identity, treated me with utter coldness. Instead, he doted on Jiang Nua, claiming he owed her. I became the joke of the circle, a woman who bore a son to secure her status, yet still couldn't keep her man. In the end, he left all his shares in the group to Jiang Nua, saying she was the true love of his life. As for me, trapped in postpartum depression and the mockery of others, I jumped from a high-rise building with my child in my arms. Only after death did I realize he had never lost his memory. He had simply used this as a way to force me to divorce him. Now that I have a second chance, why should I cling to a man who never loved me in this life? I gently touched my lower belly and said calmly, "Let him remember you. Also, please schedule an abortion for me, Miss Sue. Are you sure this is, after all, a little life?" "I'm sure." I looked into her eyes and enunciated every word. "An abortion can cause significant harm to the body. I suggest you think it over." Jiang Nua continued to feign concern. I tugged at the corner of my mouth. Jiang, you are Shin Si-hung's attending physician, not mine. I won't trouble you with my matters." I walked around her and headed straight to the nurses' station, my voice neither too loud nor too soft, just loud enough for the people in the hallway to hear clearly. "Hello, please help me schedule an abortion surgery. The sooner, the better." The nurse looked up at me in surprise, then glanced at Jiang Nua, whose face had turned pale not far away, her eyes full of curiosity. I ignored her, turned around, and walked away with the appointment slip. When I passed by Jiang Nua, I stopped. "Oh, by the way, don't let him remember me. I find it disgusting." I could see clearly that the impeccably maintained mask on her face had finally shattered completely. When I returned to the hospital room after finishing the paperwork, Shin Si-hung was already awake. Jiang Nua was sitting by his bedside, tenderly feeding him water. Upon seeing me enter, Shin Si-hung's eyes held just the right amount of unfamiliarity and vigilance. "Who are you?" His acting was just as masterful as in the previous life. Jiang Nua, on the other hand, immediately stood up, blocking me with a protective stance. "Si-hung, you just woke up, don't get worked up. This is Miss Sue." I smiled and didn't call them out. Playing along with them would be too exhausting. I simply tossed a document onto the bedside table. "Since we no longer know each other, perfect, here's the divorce agreement, sign it." The air went instantly silent. The expressions on Shin Si-hung and Jiang Nua's faces were as dramatic as they had probably imagined 10,000 scenarios where I would cry, question, or cling on desperately. The one thing they hadn't expected was for me to be this straightforward. Shin Si-hung's brows furrowed tightly. In those eyes that should have been lost after his amnesia, there was now a sharp, scrutinizing gaze. "Divorce," he repeated in a low voice, as if making sure he hadn't misheard. "That's right, divorce." I nodded. "Since you only remember your childhood sweetheart, there's no need for me, your wife, to stay in this position. As for the assets, we'll follow the prenuptial agreement we signed. I won't ask for a penny more, and you won't give a penny less." That prenuptial agreement was specially drafted by the best legal team my father hired back then, afraid that I might get the short end of the stick. "Once we divorce, 30% of the shares in Shin Si-hung's company will be unconditionally transferred to my name as compensation." Jiang Nua's face turned pale instantly. She knew the contents of that agreement better than anyone. If Shin Si-hung actually signed it, everything she had schemed and longed for would be severely compromised. She quickly stepped forward, pressed Shin Si-hung's hand, and gently soothed him. "Si-hung, don't listen to her nonsense. How can you discuss such things while you're sick? Miss Sue, Si-hung has only temporarily forgotten you. How can you be so heartless as to bring up divorce when he's at his most vulnerable?" She's back to playing the role of the kind and innocent White Lotus. I looked at her and found it laughable. Jiang, he's only forgotten me, not gone stupid. It's just a signature, it won't interfere with his recovery. I waved the appointment slip in my hand. "Besides, I've already gone through the abortion procedure, so you don't have to worry about any ambiguous entanglements between him and me in the future." Shin Si-hung's pupils contracted sharply. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law, who had been watching the drama from the doorway, finally couldn't hold back and rushed in. She snatched the appointment slip from my hand, and the moment she saw the words "induced abortion," she trembled with rage. "Su Luo, you vicious woman, what do you think you're doing? That is the Shin family's firstborn grandson." I looked at her with cold eyes. "This is my child. I'll keep it if I want, and abort it if I want. What does the Shin family have to do with it? You." My mother-in-law was so furious that she raised her hand to strike me. I didn't dodge. I knew she wouldn't dare. The Su family hasn't fallen yet, so she still wouldn't really lay a hand on me. Sure enough, her hand froze in midair, and in the end, all she could do was point at my nose and hurl insults. Fine, you're something else. Su Luo, think you've grown wings, do you? Let me tell you, as long as I live, don't you ever think about staying in the Shin family. Good, because I don't want to stay either." I pulled the appointment slip back from her hand, folded it carefully, and put it into my bag. "Shin Si-hung, I'm leaving the divorce agreement here. I'll give you 3 days to think it over, as long as you sign the divorce papers. I'll take the money and leave, no strings attached." With that, I turned and walked away without another glance at them. I know that all they want is an heir for the Shin family, not the inconvenient mother standing in the way, but this child is mine. Only I can decide whether it stays or goes. I moved back into the apartment I owned before getting married. My best friend Lin Weilon rushed over the moment she heard. The second she walked through the door, she wrapped me in a tight, warm hug. "Well done, it should have been done a long time ago. That Shin Si-hung is nothing but an ungrateful wretch who can never be won over." She was so angry she stomped her feet. "In my previous life, after I died, it was she who went to great lengths to fight for me, trying to expose the true faces of Shin Si-hung and Jeong Nua, only to be suppressed by the Shin family and meet obstacles at every turn. In this second chance at life, I won't let her worry about me again. Don't worry, I won't be foolish this time." I patted her on the back. Over the next 2 days, I kept my phone completely turned off and didn't answer anyone's calls. I needed to stay calm, and I also needed Shin Si-hung and the others to cool down. I knew they must be out of their minds with worry by now. Sure enough, on the morning of the 3rd day, Lin Weiwan's phone rang. It was Shin Si-hung's mother, my mother-in-law. Lin Weiwan put the call on speaker. On the other end, her mother-in-law's voice was no longer as harsh as before. Instead, it carried a hint of deliberate gentleness. "Weiwan, it's Si-hung's mother. Do you know where Luo Luo has gone? Why did she turn off her phone? We can't reach her, and we're really worried." Lin Weiwang rolled her eyes at her phone, but her tone remained very polite. "Auntie, Luo Luo is in a bad mood and wants to be alone. If there's something you need, you can tell me just the same." Her mother-in-law paused for a moment before speaking. "Tell Luo Luo not to be stubborn. The child is innocent. What matters can't be discussed properly without going to such extremes. Si-hung is ill right now, and as his wife, how can she be so unreasonable?" Here we go with that same old excuse again. Lin Weishi was so angry she wanted to curse, but I stopped her with a look. I took the phone directly and spoke calmly. "Mom, I'm not being stubborn, I'm very sensible," which is exactly why I decided to step aside and let him be with Jeong Nua. The breathing on the other end of the phone abruptly hitched. "Did he sign the agreement? If so, I'll come over and get it right now." Do you really have to push us this hard?" The mother-in-law's voice turned tearful. "Si-hung just lost his memory. It's not that he doesn't love you anymore, love." I felt as if I'd just heard the biggest joke in the world. If he really loved me, why did the selective brain damage make him forget only me, while he still remembers a childhood sweetheart from 10 years ago? Mom, do you even believe that kind of self-deceptive nonsense? On the other end of the line, there was complete silence. I hung up directly. I knew Shin Si-hung was listening right there beside her. I said these words to him on purpose. I wanted him to know that I had seen through his little tricks long ago. In the afternoon, Shin Si-hung's special assistant called me and said that Mr. Shin wanted to meet to discuss the divorce agreement. The meeting was set in a private room at an upscale club. When I arrived, Shin Si-hung was already there. He had changed out of his hospital gown and was wearing a well-tailored black suit, with his hair combed perfectly. Aside from a lingering pallor, there was no sign that he had been seriously ill. Jeong Nua was not there. He sat alone on the sofa, fidgeting with a lighter in his hand. His eyes, dark and unreadable, had a change of heart. I pulled out the chair across from him and sat down. He didn't answer, only looked up at me. "Are you really giving up on the child? What's it to you?" I retorted. He was momentarily stumped by my response, and his expression darkened. "Su Luo, do you realize what you're doing?" "Of course I do." I met his gaze. "I'm cutting my losses in time." The lighter in his hand snapped shut with a click. "If you want the shares, that's fine, but the child must stay. Once the child is born, you'll hand them over to my mother to raise. You can take the money and go anywhere you want, live whatever life you choose. After that, we'll have nothing to do with each other." I looked at him and suddenly smiled. "Shin Si-hung, do you really think every woman is dying to have your child? If you want a child, fine." I leaned slightly forward, looking into his eyes. "Let Jeong Nua have it for you. Isn't she your true love? The fruit of your love would surely be far more noble than one born from someone as irrelevant as me." "Su Luo," he abruptly stood up. "Don't push your luck." Am I pushing my luck? I looked up at him, the smile on my lips growing colder. "Who is really pushing whose luck?" "Shin Si-hung, you've been pretending to have amnesia just to force me into a divorce and make room for your childhood sweetheart. What's the matter, now that you realize the price of divorce is too high? you're having second thoughts, you want the child but aren't willing to pay the price. Since when does such a good deal exist in this world? Let me tell you, this child is mine, and I have the final say. Sign the divorce agreement or don't, I don't care, I'm going ahead with the surgery tomorrow, and by then you'll get nothing. With that, I picked up my bag and turned to leave. At the door, he grabbed me by the wrist. How dare you? His voice was squeezed through clenched teeth. In those eyes, there was no trace of feigned confusion left, only naked threat and brutality. I knew it. I had pushed him too far. Just then, the door to the private room was pushed open. Jiang Nua walked over carrying a thermos. Seeing how tense and confrontational we were, the smile on her face froze for a moment, but quickly returned to normal. Si Heng, I made you some soup. Auntie said you were here, so I specially brought it over for you. I struggled, trying to shake off Shen Siheng's hand. In the chaos, my arm happened to bump directly into Jiang Nua. Ah, she cried out in surprise. The thermos slipped from her hand, and the scalding soup splashed instantly toward her. Shen Siheng suddenly flung me away and pulled Jiang Nua protectively into his arms. I stumbled back a few steps, crashing into the doorframe. A sharp pain shooting through my lower back, a dull, dragging ache followed in my lower abdomen. My face went pale, and I instinctively clutched my stomach. Shen Siheng's gaze fell on my hand covering my stomach, his eyes complex. Jiang Nua, meanwhile, quickly walked to his side and anxiously looked him up and down. Siheng, are you okay? Did she hurt you? Shen Siheng did not answer her, only staring fixedly at me. The door was pushed open again, and my mother-in-law walked in. Seeing the scene before her, she immediately rushed over to me, pointed at my nose, and began to curse. You jinx, are you trying to get my son killed? If Siheng suffers the slightest harm, I'll make sure you're buried with the entire Shen family. I was in too much pain to speak. Cold sweat dripping from my temples, I looked at them. One is my legal husband, the other is my mother-in-law in name only. They crowded around me, hurling accusations and abuse, without a single person asking if I was in pain. It was exactly the same as in my previous life, when I lay on the delivery bed hemorrhaging, and they only cared whether the child was a boy or a girl. Suddenly, I laughed, laughing so hard that tears streamed down. This is the person I have loved for 10 years, a person who, for someone else, did not hesitate to betray me and hurt me. I held onto the wall, slowly straightened up, and wiped the tears from the corners of my eyes. Shen Siheng, we're done, not divorced. You are done. My words stunned the three people present. Shen Siheng frowned even more deeply, his eyes filled with nothing but scrutiny and confusion. My mother-in-law looked at me as if I were insane. What nonsense are you talking about? Without paying them any further attention, I took out my phone and dialed Lin Weiwan's number. It's not too late, call me an ambulance to the Jinbi Club. My stomach hurts, I might be having a miscarriage. Hearing the word miscarriage, Shen Siheng's face instantly turned ashen. He wanted to step forward, but Jiang Nua held him back tightly. Siheng, don't go near her, she's faking it, she's using this to force you to give in. The mother-in-law quickly caught on and chimed in. Right, she did it on purpose, this woman is so calculating. The pain made my vision go dark in waves, yet I still forced a mocking smile. As for whether I'm faking it, won't we find out once the ambulance arrives and the doctor examines me? But by then, the news that the president of the Shen Group, amid divorce disputes, pushed his pregnant wife and caused her to miscarry is bound to be quite sensational. Shen Siheng was so enraged that the veins bulged at his temples. The ambulance arrived very quickly, as I was being carried onto the stretcher. I could clearly see the struggle and fury in Shen Siheng's eyes. He wanted to stop it, but was afraid that if things really escalated, there would be no way to manage the aftermath. In the end, he could only watch helplessly as I was pushed away. At the hospital, after a series of tests, the doctor said I had only experienced a threatened miscarriage. The baby was fine, but I needed to be hospitalized for observation. Lying on the hospital bed, Lin Weiwei stood by, so angry that tears kept falling. That family is absolutely inhuman. Luo, we can't just let this slide. Of course we won't. I patted her hand soothingly. News of my hospitalization had gotten out after all. The next day, my father flew back from abroad. The moment he entered the ward and saw my pale face, his eyes immediately reddened. Dad, I said, sitting up, lie still, don't move. He pressed me back down, his voice filled with restrained fury. Where's that kid from the Shen family? How dare he treat you like this? Does he think the Su family has no one left? My father had always doted on me. Back when I insisted on marrying Siheng, He was completely against it, saying that Si-hung was too ambitious and that I wouldn't be able to handle him. I was the one who was blinded by so-called love. Dad, he and I, were getting a divorce, I said calmly. My father paused for a moment, then gave a firm nod. Divorce, do it right away. A daughter of the Su family should never have to endure such humiliation. Dad, don't get involved in this just yet. I stopped him. I have my own plans. In my previous life, the Su family stood up for me, and Shin Si-hung schemed against them, gradually chipping away at their strength until they went bankrupt. In this life, I won't let my family suffer any harm because of me again. I told my dad everything about how Shin Si-hung was pretending to have lost his memory. After hearing this, my father slammed his hand on the table in fury. That beast, Dad, don't worry, he owes me, and I'll make him pay back 100 or 1,000 times over. My gaze was cold that afternoon. Shin Si-hung's mother showed up with a fruit basket. Gone was the arrogance she had shown at the club that day. Her face was now plastered with a hypocritical smile. Luoluo, dear. Are you feeling better? It was all my fault for being so upset the other day. Please don't take it to heart. As she spoke, she tried to take my hand. I pulled away. Get to the point. The smile on her face froze for a moment. Then she continued, look, you and Si-hung were husband and wife after all. What's there that can't be talked out? Now that Si-hung is ill, the company has a pile of issues, and rumors are spreading that you two are getting divorced. The stock price is plummeting. Just think of it as feeling some sympathy for him and set the divorce matter aside for now. All right, so she had come to make peace. I looked at her and suddenly found it ridiculous. The stock price dropped, and now you suddenly care. But when he pushed me and I nearly had a miscarriage, not a single one of you cared about me then. She was left speechless by my question. Go back and tell Shin Si-hung that I will not withdraw the divorce agreement. If he doesn't want the company to go bankrupt, he'd better sign it without hesitation. Otherwise, I wouldn't mind making this an even bigger mess. My words completely shattered her hopes. She finally tore off her mask and pointed at me, hurling insults. Luoluo, don't think you can act so high and mighty just because we've been polite. Do you really think the Shin family is afraid of you? Then let's give it a try, I said coldly, looking straight at her. She was frightened by the look in my eyes and finally had no choice but to slink away. After she left, my father walked in with a grave expression. The Shin family has started pulling strings to try and suppress this matter. As expected, I wasn't surprised. Luoluo, what exactly are you planning to do? My father looked at me with concern. I took out my phone and scrolled to a photo. Dad, do you still remember this person? In the photo was a middle-aged man wearing gold-rimmed glasses, looking refined and gentle. My dad glanced at it and frowned. Wang Zhenghua, wasn't he sent to prison by Shin Si-hung a few years ago for embezzling public funds, right? I nodded. Dad, help me get in touch with his family. Tell them there's more to what happened back then, and I'm the only one who knows the truth. Wang Zhenghua was a partner of Shin Si-hung in the early days of his business, as well as a close friend of his father. Later, as the company grew, Shin Si-hung, seeking to take full control of the shares, framed Wang Zhenghua for embezzlement and personally had him sent to prison. Soon after Wang Zhenghua entered prison, he died there in what was called an accident. This matter became a thorn that Shin Si-hung could never remove from his heart. This was also the only blemish on his career. In my previous life, I accidentally discovered something suspicious about this matter, but at the time, my heart was full of Shin Si-hung, and I didn't look into it further. In this new life, I have gathered all the evidence regarding this matter. This is the first great gift I am giving him. My father was very efficient and soon got in touch with Wang Zhenghua's wife. I gave her a copy of the evidence from back then. She broke down crying on the spot, fell to her knees, and begged me to help clear her husband's name. I helped her up and said, Auntie, don't worry, good and evil will have their recompense in the end, if not now, then when the time comes. Now, the time has come. Mrs. Wang took the evidence and had the case reopened at the relevant authorities. A single stone stirred up 1,000 waves. Shin Corporation CEO exposed for framing business partner, leading to an unjust death in prison. This piece of news landed like a bombshell, instantly shaking the entire business world. Shin Group's stock price hit the limit down circuit breaker. Immediately after the news, the board of directors held an emergency meeting, demanding that Shin Si-hung provide a reasonable explanation. Shin Si-hung was overwhelmed, scrambling through his connections in an attempt to suppress the news, but this time, with my father fueling the fire behind the scenes, all his efforts were in vain. Just as he was at his wit's end, I delivered my second major gift to him as Mrs. Shin. I granted an exclusive interview to a prestigious financial magazine. In the interview, I calmly recounted in full detail how Shin Si-hung, during my pregnancy, conspired with his childhood sweetheart, a doctor, to feign amnesia and force me into a divorce. I also accidentally mentioned the prenuptial agreement involving 30% of the shares. My husband probably thinks this agreement puts him at a disadvantage, which is why he's trying to use this method to leave me with nothing. I smiled lightly in front of the camera, as if it were nothing, but every word I said stripped away the veneer of Shin Si-hung's fake social elite persona. As you can imagine, once the exclusive interview was released, public opinion absolutely exploded. Abandoned his pregnant wife and framed his business partner overnight. Shin Si-hung's public image went from that of a devoted and brilliant businessman to a shameless womanizer and a merciless criminal. The PR department of the Shin Group was flooded with calls. Lying on my hospital bed, I scrolled through the overwhelming wave of online abuse against him, feeling more relieved than ever. Shin Si-hung, this is just an appetizer, the real show is yet to come. In the evening, Shin Si-hung finally arrived. He looked as if he hadn't slept for days. With deep dark circles under his eyes, his designer suit was crumpled, and he no longer had his previous confident and energetic demeanor. The moment he entered, he waved off his attendants, shut the door of the hospital room, and glared at me with bloodshot eyes. "Su Luo, what exactly are you trying to do?" he growled, like a cornered beast with no way out. "Can't you tell what I'm trying to do?" I put down my phone unhurriedly. "I'm going to ruin you. Are you crazy? What good does this do you? Destroy me. Destroy the Shin family. You'll end up with nothing too." "Who says I'll end up with nothing?" I looked up at him. "Seeing you suffer, seeing you fall from grace, that makes me very, very happy." His chest heaved violently, clearly enraged by my words. "Su Luo, we were husband and wife. Do you really have to be so ruthless?" His voice softened, carrying a hint of pleading. "Just go out there now and tell the media it was all a misunderstanding. I'll take care of the Wang Zhenghua matter. I'll sign the divorce agreement immediately, and you'll get every share you're owed. Can we end this on good terms, please?" Finally, he was starting to feel afraid. I looked at him and suddenly smiled. "Shin Si-hung, have you forgotten that I still have something in my hands?" His face turned pale in an instant. What I was referring to was the dirt I had on how his father made his fortune back in the day. Shin Si-hung's father, Old Master Shin, had built his fortune through smuggling. This matter was the Shin family's best-kept secret. In the previous life, on his deathbed, Old Master Shin personally handed me all the evidence and made me swear to use it to knock some sense into Shin Si-hung if he ever lost his way, so he wouldn't forget his roots. The irony is, before I even had the chance to use it against him, he was the one who drove me to my doom in this life. I was reborn on the day my pregnancy was diagnosed. The first thing I did was return to the old Shin family residence and retrieve the evidence. "How could you know?" Shin Si-hung's voice trembled. "How I know doesn't matter." I looked at his terrified face and felt my smile growing wider. "What matters is, if this gets exposed, what do you think will happen to the Shin family, and what will become of the vast Shin group?" The Shin group owes its current success to the early accumulation of capital through disreputable means. If exposed, this would be not just a tax issue but a serious criminal offense. The Shin family would completely collapse, and none of them would be able to escape. "No, you can't do this." He grabbed my shoulders and shook me violently. "That's illegal. You'll get caught up in it too. What do I have to be afraid of?" I shrugged indifferently. "I've got nothing left anyway, just a worthless life. Taking the entire Shin family down with me is more than worth it." My words drenched him from head to toe like a bucket of ice water, chilling him to the bone. He finally let go of me, stumbled back 2 steps, and collapsed onto the sofa. His whole body seemed drained of all strength. "What do you want from me?" he murmured, his voice filled with despair. "Simple." I sat up and told him, word for word. "First, issue a public apology to me, to the Su family, and to the Wang Zhenghua family, whom you framed. Second, aside from the shares stipulated in the prenuptial agreement, I want half of all real estate assets under your name. Third, and most importantly," I looked into his eyes and slowly uttered the last 3 words, "turn yourself in." Shin Si-hung's head snapped up as he looked at me in disbelief. "Turn myself in? Su Luo, have you lost your mind?" "I haven't lost my mind." I was very calm. "Framing someone and sending them to prison is a crime, and if you commit a crime, you must be punished. Isn't that a simple truth?" Besides, sacrificing you alone to protect the rest of the Shin family, that's a pretty good deal, don't you dare, he roared, then we'll go to hell together, I shrugged, ready to burn it all down the hospital. Room fell into a deathly silence. Shin Si-hung stared at me with a deadly glare, as if he wanted to devour me alive. I know I am pushing his limits, but so what? When he pushed me to the brink, did he ever think about mine? After a long while, he finally conceded defeat. Fine. He forced out this single word through gritted teeth, I promise you. The hatred in his eyes was almost tangible, but I didn't care, I just wanted him ruined, stripped of everything. 3 days later, Shin Si-hung held a press conference. Before the cameras of the national media, he admitted to the crimes of framing his business partner Wang Zhenghua and vowed to apologize to Wang's family. Then, he read a long letter of apology, expressing his deepest remorse to me and the Su family. Throughout the entire process, his face showed no emotion. Like a soulless puppet, I knew that for him, this was an ordeal even more unbearable than death. The press conference ended, and he was immediately taken away by the police on the spot. The stock price of the Shin Group completely collapsed. Her mother-in-law, unable to withstand the shock, fainted on the spot. Yet Jiang Nua, his childhood sweetheart, never showed up from beginning to end. I guess she was probably afraid of being implicated by the Shin family and has long gone into hiding, but it doesn't matter. I won't let her off. Shin Si-hung's case will go to trial soon, because of voluntary surrender. He was ultimately sentenced to 10 years. The assets under his name were also divided according to our agreement. I received a large sum of money and several properties, along with the precarious 30% stake in the Shin Group. My father advised me to sell the shares to avoid trouble. I refused. I will keep these shares for my child. The moment the doctor said the child was still there, I felt a wave of relief. I once thought that letting go was the only way to make a clean break with the past, but in that moment, I suddenly understood. Letting him live, letting him become the heir of the Su family, would be the most complete punishment for Shin Si-hung. I want my child to know that everything his mother lost, he will take back with his own hands. After dealing with Shin Si-hung, I began to turn my attention to Jiang Nu. I hired someone to look into her. What I found was shocking. Jiang, hailed as a prodigy in the medical field, turned out to have a completely fabricated resume. Her academic degrees were bought with money, her professional license was forged. Even the papers she published in top-tier international journals were stolen from others and passed off as her own. And it was Shin Si-hung who helped her do all of this. I compiled all the evidence and anonymously sent it to the hospital's disciplinary inspection committee, as well as to major medical media outlets. Soon, news of Jiang Nua's academic fraud and unlicensed medical practice spread across the entire internet. The hospital dismissed her immediately and permanently revoked her medical license. She became the disgrace of the medical community. A rat scurrying in the gutter for all to loathe. I thought she would vanish without a trace. To my surprise, she had the nerve to come find me. That day, I had just returned home when I saw her waiting downstairs at my apartment building. She had lost a lot of weight. With deep sunken eyes and none of her former radiance, she looked haggard and disheveled. When she saw me, she rushed over like a madwoman and grabbed my arm. Su Luo, was it you? Was it you who did this to me? Yes, it was me, I said calmly, looking at her. Everything you have now was stolen. I've simply returned it to its rightful owner. Return the object to its rightful owner. As if she had heard a joke, she let out a sharp, piercing laugh. Who do you think you are? Si-hung loves me. The position of Mrs. Shin should be mine. It's you, you wretch, who used your family's power and influence to force him to marry you. You stole everything from me. Her words left me stunned. To force him to marry me. Shin Si-hung and I fell in love freely. Back then, he pursued me relentlessly, showering me with flowers and cars, causing a citywide sensation. And that was when I finally opened my heart. My father disapproved at first, believing his intentions were impure, but I insisted, even going so far as to have a falling out with my father, before he reluctantly gave his consent. When did I ever use my power to force a marriage? Looking at Jiang Nua's face, twisted with jealousy, I suddenly understood this, I'm afraid, is yet another lie Shin Si-hung made up specifically to appease his childhood sweetheart. He shifted all the blame onto me. He turned himself into the tragic male lead, forced to sacrifice love for the sake of family interests, and Jiang Nua was the innocent, wronged heroine. What a grand, tear-jerking love story. You're right, I suddenly laughed. Yes, I was the one who pushed him. Not only that, I also forced him to break up with you and convinced him to hold me in the palm of his hand. so what does that make you angry? I'll kill you. Jiang Nua was completely enraged by my words. She lunged at me like a wild animal, her nails slashed viciously across my cheek. I didn't dodge, letting her rage on. It wasn't until the security guards rushed over and pulled her away, I touched the bloody scratches on my face. Watching Jiang Nua being dragged off, my eyes cold. It was time to end it all. Jiang Nua was detained for 15 days for intentional injury, on the day she was released from the detention center. What awaited her was not freedom, but a court summons. After the downfall of the Shen family, the competitors who had been suppressed by Shen Siheng began to fight back. One of them uncovered that years ago, in order to pave the way for Jiang Nua. Shen Siheng had used improper means to bring down a medical device company, leading its owner to bankruptcy and suicide. Jiang Nua was the direct beneficiary and participant in that incident. The evidence was conclusive. As an accessory, she was sentenced to 5 years. When I heard the news, I was preparing the nursery for my child. Lin Weijing, who was helping nearby, remarked with emotion, "Evil truly has its retribution." I smiled and said nothing. I simply took back everything that was rightfully mine. A year later, my son was born. I named him Suanan. May he have a lifetime of safety, smoothness, and carefree joy. My father was overjoyed. He transferred half of the company's shares to my son's name, saying he would make him the happiest child in the world. I didn't say no. 2 more years passed, and I came across news about Shen Siheng. He had shown good behavior in prison and received a sentence reduction. In the photo, he looked much older. Most of his hair had turned gray, and his eyes were hollow, stripped of any trace of the vitality he once had. Later, I heard that after his release, he didn't reach out to anyone. He went alone to a small town in the south and made a living through odd jobs. After the Shen family went bankrupt, his mother couldn't bear the blow and lost her mind, so she was sent to a sanatorium. The Shen family, once a magnificent and powerful clan, thus completely withdrew from the stage of history. I looked at my son in my arms, who had already begun to babble, and kissed him on the forehead. "Sweetheart, look, the sky has cleared up outside the window. The sunlight is just right. My life has finally cleared up after the storm. As for those who have hurt me, what became of them no longer matters, because I have already started my new life, a new life without Shen Siheng, yet filled with sunshine and hope." I took an in and took over my father's company. I was no longer that love-struck fool who only knew how to revolve around a man. I started learning management and investment, steadily building up the Su family's business. I became a renowned businesswoman, with no shortage of suitors around me. There are young and handsome younger men, as well as mature and steady business partners, but I turned them all down, and my heart died in my last marriage. Now, all I want is to stay with my son, protect my family, and live the rest of my life in peace. When Anan was 5 years old, I took him to an amusement park. In front of the carousel, I saw a figure that was both familiar and unfamiliar. It was Shen Siheng. He looked even more down and out than he did in the news, wearing a faded white t-shirt, covered in dust. He was struggling to repair a broken carousel. He seemed to notice me too, froze mid-motion, his entire body going stiff. His gaze fell onto Anan's face and lingered there, unable to look away for a long time. The face, almost a perfect replica of his own, stirred emotions in his eyes that were unfathomably complex. There was shock, there was remorse, and there was also a hint of longing that I couldn't quite understand. I took Anan by the hand and turned to leave without another word. "Mommy, why was that uncle staring at me?" Anan asked curiously, tilting his head up. "Because our Anan is just too adorable," I said, pinching his little nose with a smile. Behind me, that burning gaze followed me like a shadow. I did not look back. "Shen Siheng, what's between us ended long ago. From the moment I decided to keep this child and lay this inescapable trap for you, we were already finished. With all ties of gratitude and affection severed, what you owed me has already been repaid with your freedom and the entire Shen family. Now, we owe each other nothing. From this day on, you go your way, and I'll go mine. The mountains are high and the rivers are long. May we never meet again." After hearing this story, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share them in the comments section. We look forward to hearing from you.